Thank you for joining Market News with Rodney Lake. This is a regular program for the GW Investment Institute, where we talk about timely market topics. I'm Rodney Lake, the director of the GW Investment Institute. Let's get started. Welcome back to Market News with Rodney Lake. I'm your host, Rodney Lake. Today is episode 12. We are here coming to you from the GW School of Business Duquesne Innovation Studio. Fantastic day because today we're hosting our first guest, Dean Perry. Dean Perry is joining us. Dean Perry, thank you so much for joining Market News with Rodney Lake. This is such an honor for us. Could you maybe talk about your background and your journey to becoming the Dean at the GW School of Business?
Sure. So thank you for having me. This is very exciting. Market News is going gangbusters, and so we're really happy about that. I had sort of a non-traditional path to academic administration. I started my career after the MBA program as a senior, well, I didn't start as a senior economist. I started as a financial analyst at Freddie Mac. I worked in a group called Financial Research and then later became Housing Economics. I did a lot of sort of financial analysis. I did coding. I supported a lot of our economists. I did special projects for the chairman and CEO, and really sort of came to be interested in affordable housing and access to home ownership as part of the American dream, as part of a route to wealth accumulation, and I still study those topics to this day. So I left Freddie to go back to the doctoral program full time, which I did at UNC Chapel Hill, and go Heels, if I'm allowed to say that on a GW production.
For your alma mater, you could say that, yes.
Did that, came out, and then joined GW as an assistant professor. Came here because of its unique positioning in DC, and because my research was touched on the effects of the public policy on business practices. It was and is the ideal place for me to work and to study. And then after going through the sort of professor pipeline, I became department chair and then associate dean, vice dean. I was vice provost for diversity and inclusion for a year, did a bunch of other things, but now here I am.
Excellent. That is a great set of experiences. And I'm going to touch on a couple of those. We're going to come back specifically to your market expertise. So I want to put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. One of the things you mentioned I want to pick up on is GW's location. When you talk about the School of Business, we're here right in Foggy Bottom, right in the sort of the center of it all, as they say. Could you talk to us about and tell their viewers and listeners, why is that important? And how does GW's School of Business specifically leverage our location?
Sure. Get this question all the time, and it never gets old. I never get tired of talking about it because, my drive in to work every morning, depending on which way I go, I pass the White House, I pass the Federal Reserve, I pass the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. I pass all of these institutions which affect the global business world. And so the proximity that GW has to these institutions, to me, isn't just symbolic, because we actually interact with our alums who work there or leaders who actually come in and teach our courses. Right. We have faculty who collaborate on research with these institutions. They provide data for us in lots of examples. The State Department is also bordering on our campus. And so the global and international content that we're able to offer our students is unmatched, because it turns out there is no other business school that has that kind of proximity to these institutions, even those that are within the Washington metropolitan area. So it's not just a symbolic thing, it's real. And, our students intern on Capitol Hill, our students work with these institutions. They do projects that involve members of these communities. And so it just makes the GW business experience very, very unique and very special.
And I would highlight that, as many of the students list that as a top sort of reason why they come to GW. And so it's great to hear directly from the dean here on all of that. Now I'm going to move on to the market. You mentioned sort of your expertise. You started a career at Freddie Mac, which makes you a superstar in the corporate world and now in the academic world. So again, thanks for being here.
I don't know about that. I don't know how you define superstar, but I'll take it.
Well, today for sure, but I think in general. So, but let's really work on this sort of area of commissions. So on the brokerage commissions, lots of people are concerned about, there's all these big changes. It seems like nobody really understands what's going on. If you ask one person, it seems like you get one answer. You ask somebody else, they get another answer. So let's hear your answer. You certainly are knowledgeable about this. You have spoken about this. So could you maybe outline what's actually happening with these things and what are some of those impacts?
So I'll do my best because it is a very complicated set of issues. And it's complicated because home buying is complicated. And the market for becoming a homeowner or selling a home is just a very complicated one. There's just a lot of parties and intermediaries that are involved. So I'll do my best. So this all started when a group of sellers filed a class action suit against the National Association of Realtors and a number of multiple listing services. Now, multiple listing services provide a service. They are one of these intermediaries.
This is MLS for everybody.
Yes, MLS for everybody. And because MLSs, sort of provide information both to end consumers, but also help list properties that are for sale. And so real estate agents use them. And in many cases, consumers are able to access some of those data to be able to sort of look at prices and find out what's out there. It's more complicated than that,
right?
But I'm not going to go into the
It's
details.
not a 3-hour show.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'll cut all that short. What the sellers were upset about is what they accused the industry of, which is price fixing, which the allegation was that when a person is selling a home, they are required to pay approximately 6% to real estate agents, split roughly half and half between the agent that is representing the seller and the agent that is representing the buyer.
And that's the way it's been.
That's the way it's been, even though that's not entirely true.
But that's
because those are that rate has always been negotiable.
Got it.
But whatever, the courts,
generally that's the way it's
generally that's the way that it works. And courts obviously believed that was very much the standard. And so sellers were arguing we should not have to pay buyers' agents. And so one proposal, one sort of pushback alternative would be the kind of model that occurs in some other countries in which the buyer pays their agent out of their own pocket. Agents representing sounds easy, right? It makes sense. If you have an attorney, for example, you pay your attorney out of your pocket. You might be able to recover some of those expenses later, depending on, whatever outcome of whatever lawsuit or action you're taking. So simple, we'll just convert to that model. Well, it's actually not that simple, because all of a sudden, what you would be doing in theory is asking the buyer to come out of their pocket for an additional 3%. That is not only that is just unaffordable for a huge swath of the market, particularly for first-time home buyers who can barely afford to come up with the funds they need
for the
down payment,
which is 3.5% sometimes for the low end there.
That's right.
This is comparable to that even.
That's right. And you say, that sounds like a non-trivial amount of money. Well, as my dad pointed out for me, he was looking at listings in DC. He said it was struggle for him to find one that was less than $1 million. So 3.5% of $1 million is a lot of money. 3.5% of $500,000 is a lot of money.
$15,000 for $500,000.
That's right. So people struggle for years to be able to accumulate enough savings to be able to enter homeownership. And boom, now you're telling them that they have to come up with this out of pocket. So then another group in the industry says, well, this is easily taken care of, right?
Yeah.
We just include it in the mortgage. Well, it turns out that Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, FHA, Veterans Administration, they're like, no, you can't just do that. They have both policies, and in the case of the Veterans Administration, outright prohibitions from covering those costs the same way they might cover other seller, say, concessions, right? Not seller concessions, but other expenses that go into closing costs. I don't want to get into the seller concession.
But they're more directly associated with the property.
That's right.
Not the deal.
That's right. So this is about the deal, not the property. That's exactly the issue. And investors want to be able to value the property. And the entire secondary mortgage market, the entire housing finance system that's based on mortgage-backed securities rests on the understanding that we're all on the same page about how to value the property.
Right.
And so when you start adding in all these other things, then you get noise, it gets confusing, and people are very wary of it. That's on the investment side. Back to the home buyer. Home buyers just won't be able to afford to pay these costs out of their own pocket. And so now what the industry is doing is trying to figure out, now, how can we work around this? Mm-hmm. Because these rules went to effect earlier this summer. And so that's kind of where we are, trying to figure out how to work around this. Because as it stands, a home buyer has to enter a written agreement with their agent before the agent shows them a home. And in that agreement, they have to state if the seller is not willing to pay the buyer's agent commission, then the buyer is responsible for it. Well, that's a very scary document to sign.
Right.
I don't think I would sign it. I've been at this for a very long time. And so there's just a lot of confusion and a lot of debates going on about this issue.
Well, I don't think we solved the world's problems here today, but I'm very certain that you've helped everybody understand this situation a little bit better. So thanks for going over that. I think it's already built in. You're going to have to come back so we can actually spend some more time talking about this.
Once it gets solved, I'm happy to come back and talk about it.
Well, thank you for lending your expertise for that part. So 2 more things I want to talk about before we wrap here. One is, really connected to our students, but really for everyone. AI is transforming the world in a whole variety of things. Maybe could you give us your thoughts about AI and the future of work, just generally speaking, and how our students might think about preparing themselves?
So I love this question because I turn to our students for guidance about AI because they know way more about it than I do. They're on top of these evolving technologies. AI is not new and has been transforming work since I entered the workforce. And, I mentioned my time at Freddie Mac. They are artificially intelligent algorithms have been used in sort of the mortgage industry for many, many years. And now we're seeing an additional transformation because there's just more data available and more sort of computing power. But we've been on this trajectory for a long time. And so, yes, it's going to change the way people's jobs and job functions that are necessary. There's no question about that. Again, that's already happening.
Yeah.
So what our students need to do to prepare is, one, be able to understand how to integrate artificially intelligent decision-making in their decisions, because our students are human and so have real intelligence.
Right.
Don't have to rely not artificial. They have actual intelligence. And the key is, as intelligent beings, how do we integrate these technologies to make our decisions more accurate, more efficient, and then help us do better at what only humans can do. And so that requires focusing on analytical skills more than we ever have before. Well, computers, crunch a lot of our numbers, but it's critical for us to understand what those algorithms and what those computers are doing.
Yeah.
Because it is humans that are designing and coding these algorithms and these decisions. And so in order to be in that position, even if we're not all going to become coders, you have to be able to know what you need your coder to do.
Right.
And what kinds of technologies and AI related solutions are actually going to make your business run more efficiently and more effectively.
A little bit of what are the right questions or questions to ask?
That's right. What are the right questions to ask?
Informed enough to know that.
That's right. That is absolutely right.
Excellent. Well, we have time for just one more thing for this episode. That could be a whole separate episode, AI and the future of work as well.
No doubt.
So let's move on, though, to wrap up. So maybe you could just give us your take, advice, words of wisdom on aspiring business students or anybody out there that's listening or watching us on YouTube. What advice would you give people who are studying business now or want to retrain themselves? What would you say to them?
Oh, I would say, definitely watch market news.
That's the no-brainer.
That's right. That's a no-brainer. But these kinds of opportunities to engage with business leaders, to find out what's going on, to stay current are essential. So that's one thing. There's just so much information available in real time, but you have to make time to be able to absorb it because it's going on outside of the classroom. It's going on outside of your internships. The other thing I would suggest is, and you may have to schedule this as well, is time to focus on building your network because the network is one of the most valuable things that GW students have access to. And this is something that needs to be intentional and strategic. But this is a network that you'll have throughout your career if you are smart about it. And there's nothing wrong with taking time out to spend time with your classmates and engage with our many, many, many very exciting and very, very active student organizations and engaging with activities that involve GWSB alums. There's nothing wrong with spending time on that. It may seem like you're wasting time, but you're absolutely not. It will pay off.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for your time, Dean Perry. Very much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
That is a wrap for episode 12 for Market News with Rodney Lake. See you on the next episode of Market News with Rodney Lake. See you then. Disclaimer, the content shared in the GW Investment Institute podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the GW Investment Institute or the George Washington University. Listeners should not act upon the information provided without seeking professional advice from a qualified financial advisor. Investing involves risks, including the loss of principal. The GW Investment Institute, the George Washington University, and the podcast hosts do not assume any responsibility for any investment decisions made based on the content of this podcast. Always conduct your own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.